It's the last straw. A warning from the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Northern District. Don't lie for the other guy. We are talking about straw purchases, and we're delighted to have with us the U.S. Attorney Clay Joyner for the Northern District. How are you doing, Clay?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you so much for being here. Why the warning? What is happening?
Well, so we've just wrapped up a case where we had 6 individuals involved in a conspiracy to smuggle guns to Chicago. 2 of those individuals were from Chicago, involved with gangs there. One of the individuals, Jarvis Hood, was kind of the hub here. He's from Belzona. He recruited 3 other persons to make straw purchases for the group so that the guns could be smuggled.
Now, what is a straw purchase?
So a straw purchase functionally is you have a person go in and buy a firearm that you, as your graphic says, someone makes a legal transaction for another person that the person wouldn't be able to make themselves, and that requires lying on a form because they ask, are you buying this gun for yourself? And if you say yes and you're buying it for someone else, you've just committed a federal crime, as the folks in this case found out.
Okay, also purchasing a firearm for someone who is not legally
right,
allowed
I'm sorry,
to
I should
own
have
it.
pointed. Yeah, so for instance, if a convicted felon who cannot purchase a firearm asks someone to buy that gun, that person is committing the crime of making a straw purchase for the convicted felon.
And also, like, if someone asks me to go purchase a gun, it's like, hey, listen, I'm buying the gun, but I don't want to be associated with the transaction. That's still a federal crime? Absolutely
it is, because again, you're lying on the form. You're claiming that you're buying the gun for yourself, for your own personal use, when in fact you're buying it for this third-party individual who's gotten you to go in and make the purchase, and in fact has given you the money 9 times out of 10 to make that purchase. You go out in the parking lot, you give it to that person, and in this case, we had duffel bags full of guns going to Chicago, and it created, in Chicago, as we all know, already has an endemic of just violent crime there, and or violent crime is endemic to Chicago. And so guns such as these, the longer guns that you see on screen, were purchased at gun shows for the most part, as by individuals involved in the scheme. But you'll see a picture at the end, I think, of a number of Glocks. And so Glock handguns, there were 67 guns smuggled to Chicago, and the vast majority of those were Glock handguns, some of which showed up later with Glock switches, rendering them into automatic firearms that made them even more inherently dangerous. And so what we found, 12 of those guns have been recovered after involvement in crimes such as, I think, 3 homicides, a number of armed robberies, a number of aggravated assaults where shots were fired and a victim was struck, unfortunately. And so what I really want people to focus in on is the fact that if you commit this crime, that's actually where that gun is potentially going. It's going someplace like Chicago, or we actually had a couple of guns recovered in Detroit as well. And there's already a horrific violent crime problem in those places. And if you make these types of purchases, you're more than likely continuing that process.
Right. And when it comes to the 3 people that you just prosecuted, what kind of sentences are they now looking at?
So they've all been, everyone in the scheme has been sentenced. The 2 people from Chicago, kind of the leader of the pack who actually threatened to witness as well, he received a sentence of 151 months. That was Ronell Pratt. Derek Stewart Jr. received a sentence of 10 years. Jarvis Hood, who was essentially the Mississippi hub, received a sentence of 5 years for making the connection between the Chicago crowd and the purchasers here. And then the purchasers themselves, one received roughly a 3-year sentence, one received a 14-month sentence, and one received a probationary sentence. But I wouldn't focus on the length of the sentence quite as much as I would the fact that these 3 people who otherwise had no criminal history whatsoever are now convicted felons, and that felony is going to follow them for the rest of their lives.
Wow. Well, thank you so much there, U.S. Attorney Clay Joyner, for joining us this afternoon. And you've been warned.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, prior to March of